Hey dudes, welcome to episode 4 of Whiskey with Reagan. Today I'm going to be enjoying a spicy little number called Balcones 1 single malt whiskey out of Texas, 53% alcohol by volume. I'll tell you right now, I've had this a bit and it is spicy. That's not like a euphemism that some people like to use right now for, oh, it's cool. No, it's legitimately spicy. There's a lot of like a cinnamony flavor and a few other things in there that don't be surprised if I give it a little cough, because it's legit. All right, dudes, let's talk mantras. All right, so mantras are what people, and simplistic way to say it is, mantras are what people repeat to themselves over and over again to reinforce a certain methodology or thought process to what they're doing. So I hear a lot of crazy ones out there. There's some dudes who like to make up their own, and they're just not really based on anything. Keep in mind that there's context to a lot of stuff. So I've even heard people use quotes of the Bible and not understand the context behind it, and to them it makes sense to just grab this quote out of stand up and just take it completely out of context and then try and make a stand with it or anything like that. So I see that a decent amount. So I'm not a huge mantra guy. There's a lot of things that I do like that are easily repeatable and something that reinforces your thought process and that sort of deal. But I've been training with former Delta operators. I know I've said that like 1,000 times, but those are the guys that I really spent most of my time training with as an instructor, and I still like to continue doing that sort of thing. So I have never once heard any of those guys ever say hua. I've got, there's multiple guys in there, big Army, or even some other versions of SF, but not really, but they, hua this, hua that. I mean, like, I get it, heard, understood, acknowledged, gotcha. Most of those guys don't dig in on that. They have their own reasons behind it. I don't want to get into that. I got nothing to throw in on that. But you'll find that just because it's something a lot of people say, or it doesn't necessarily mean that it has the value that they're putting on it. So I'll leave it at that. Now, if your instructor likes to use these mantras or anything like that, I'm not calling you stupid for going to him. I'm not calling him stupid. Again, there's context. There's certain times that even the ones that I really don't like, I'm like, all right, in this instance, that makes sense. But I see it all the time where people will just get their soul wrapped around a particular saying, and I'm like, well, that doesn't really hold water in like a high percentage of situations. So anyway, without going too far into why I don't like them, let's talk about some of the ones I don't like, and I'll give you a couple that I actually do put some value in. So, train like you fight. Hear that all the time? Not a fan. A lot of times I see people use mantras to justify some poor decisions. So biggest one is like, it would be August and somebody was like, oh, I want to put my armor on to do this basic handgun or this basic rifle course. I'm like, cool, I'm not going to stop you from doing it. However, is there more value in learning to use your handgun correctly, or putting a bunch of gear on and then learning to use your handgun correctly? Now, if you chose number 2, here's the problem with that. You're out there from 8 to 4 o'clock and it's 104 degrees. It's going to be 104 tomorrow in the middle of class, so I'm super looking forward to that. Are you going to get more out of the course by being more smoked at the end of the course, or by going through the course in the way it's intended? Right, so it doesn't matter how strong you are, and if you're just wanting to prove that you're strong enough to wear kit in 104 degrees, cool. If that's what you're wanting out of the class, man, go do Pilates or something else, or hot yoga with your gear on, man. It'd be a lot cheaper than going to a firearms course. So there's no ammunition cost in hot yoga, from what I understand. So, but when people like to say that to me out there, I'm like, hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if we're going to play the train like you fight, then where's your gas mask? Where's your assault pack? Where's your comms? Where's your helmet? Have you done any hand-to-hand combat training? Do you constantly do hand-to-hand combat training, or did you do something 16 years ago and then you assume that you're good still this far forward? I see so many holes in that I really don't like to say that one. I really don't like to hear it either. Pat Mack did a video on that exact saying a while back and pointed out a few holes in it and that sort of thing. I like a lot about Pat Mack. It was long before he started doing his new age YouTube stuff, I guess. So if I had to use that, what I would actually say, if use something along that mentality, I would say something more like train to fight. not train like you fight, train to fight. So if you're going to shoot on the flat range, make sure we know the next step for adaptability on the two-way range, right? Not let me force my gear on and somehow that's gonna make me train like I fight. Don't like it. Again, there are times when that's gonna make some sense. Right here, the vast majority of it I see where it's used, not so much. One of the ones that it's very, very rare that you would ever find me saying something like this, but adapt and overcome. All right, again, there are times, especially if your assault's not going all that well, hey, we need to adapt and overcome, or hey, your leadership's not doing that well, I gotta do what I gotta do, adapt and overcome. Makes sense. However, I see people use it as a flat range training mantra all the time. And in that instance, it can be absolutely counterproductive. Ooh, that was too much. What I mean by that is people will use it to justify a poor piece of gear. A good example, Serpa holster, right? I see guys all the time be like, oh, I'm Serpa minded, I train. Like, I adapted and overcome. Like, oh, I'm having trouble with my gun. Oh, adapt and overcome. All right, cool. Not really the smartest decision right there. Now, I'm talking about a $50 piece of gear that there are multiple superior substitutes for at this time. In 2022. There was a time that was the only thing available that was less than $200. Like, I totally get that. Now that's not the case. There's a dozen other things and most of them are better. So, and everything has its drawback, but that one's got a pretty big serious one. So I don't want to get deep dive and knock you because you're using a Serpa, hey, but there's better stuff out there. So I see people use it to justify that instead of just getting a proper piece of equipment and eliminating a serious issue before it becomes one. All right, so adapt and overcome, like the proper adaptation is going to be to go replace that piece of kit. So I also see that it enforces the stick with it mentality. Again, sticking with it in certain instances makes sense. For the flat range training, honestly, it really doesn't. And I've talked to other instructors about this and my own opinions on it. And so what I mean by that is, so if you're knee deep in a drill and the wheels are coming off and ammunition's not cheap, it's not gonna get a whole lot cheaper, but if the wheels are coming off 1 or 2 rounds in, does it make sense to spend another 15 rounds doing the wrong thing over and over again? No, it doesn't. Stop. Fix the problem, then continue, right? That's proper adaptation, but people, oh, adapt and overcome, I'm just gonna stick with it. The problem is I've found over the years that it only takes about 3 bad repetitions for it to instill itself in your mind to where you actually have to actively attempt to untrain it. And that entire time you're using mental bandwidth, you're using the money that you spend on instruction, and you're using ammunition. Or instead, you could stop, sit the rest of that one out, discuss with the instructor what you did wrong ahead of time and why you stopped, unless the guy likes to yell at you, which some people apparently like that. I don't see any value in that if you're not 18 at Paris Island, but some people like it. So it would behoove you to figure out what's wrong before continuing on. So it doesn't set you up for a baseline of perfection. So man, I've seen it. I've had a personal experience with this where I was working CQB with one of my buddies who's an extremely experienced operator. And as I'm trying to get into the door, which I've been doing for years and teaching for a while, I was doing a couple of particular things incorrectly over and over and over again that he explained that I was like, okay, I need to make this change. And then I made the change, and then 2 or 3 weird quirks came out while I was trying to make that change, and I kept doing it over and over again, and it's like, stop. We had to dial all the way back and try it. And now I don't even think about it. Like, that's not even, I'm like, how did I make myself do that? It's probably overthinking it. So anyway, that's a couple of the mantras that I'm not a big fan of. So now that that's over, let's talk about a couple that I am. And one of my favorites, and you'll see me wearing a t-shirt every now and then, is no one is coming. It's up to us. Right? So I tend to apply this to other aspects of my life, not just training. With training, I don't really do cookie cutter courses, make sure everybody establishes a baseline of accuracy, and then we move on. So what I mean by that is if we get out there and everybody turns out to be prior DevGru and their accuracy is unbelievable, I'm like, all right, cool, well, we are moving on to do something else. So I have a trailer full of barricades, targets, steel targets, picture targets, hands, like all these particular things that I could use to up the complexity of the training. without, going overboard. Obviously, I can't carry another vehicle in there, so we can start doing vehicle tactics and shoot the car up and shoot through the windshields, all that sort of thing. I do actually can carry extra windshields. But anyway, we're not talking about that. But that's the way I adapt it to myself. Like, hey, no one's coming, it's up to me. No one's gonna bring me more crap. No one's gonna bring me the barricades that I want. No one's gonna bring me my computer with my presentation on it so that I can talk about what we're about to do next, or I can show videos or anything like that. All that stuff, I have to have everything with me, right? So one of the ways I've adapted it to the rest of my life is I've recently purchased an ATV. I've got a 1988 Kawasaki Mule that I've had forever, and the warden and I decided we want to go ATVing with the family. I'm like, all right, well, cool. In my mind, hey, no one's coming out there to help you. You pretend that you're the only person out there in the middle of this big ATV park, and you got a 16-mile adventure trail that you're supposed to go on. Adventure trail turned out to be a little bit too much for the 1988 Mule 1000. You couldn't kill it, but it couldn't crawl over everything. So I have a winch on my ATV. I've got an extra chain, I've got an extra strap, I've got water, I've got food, I've got secondary comms, not just my phone, but another way to contact people. I've got all kinds of things to just make sure that we have a good time out there, and that if something does go wrong, I can either recover the mule, or one of the ATVs or whatever, and I can abandon it and get my family to a place where they can recuperate or whatever, right? So that's one of those things I like to apply. In my vehicles, I carry extra fire extinguishers. I carry all kinds of stuff, another kit, lots of med kits, armor, whatever. I have all that sort of stuff stowed with me. Just thinking that, hey, no one else is going to be out there. I am responsible for this. So it's one of the ones I do actually like. Again, it can be picked apart. Absolutely. You can take it to a level that it doesn't make sense. So another one, the enemy gets a vote. All right, I've heard this a lot in training with these guys. There's no such thing as a guarantee in interpersonal violence. So if one of the easy things that I think is like, hey, I use that when I'm setting up my everyday carry stuff, or EDC, or whatever acronym anybody wants to use on it today, I carry extra ammunition. I carry a flashlight. I carry a tourniquet. I've been known to carry combat gauze. I carry a very reliable handgun. Anyway, all that sort of thing is like, hey, you could take it to the next level. It's probably not going to be okay for me to be walking through my kid's school with my helmet and NVGs on, armor and rifle, and then comms and all that. Yeah, okay, you could take it to that wrong level. So, but there is a lot of value in it, and understanding that no matter how you are framing the engagement of how it's going to go in your mind, like, you don't have full control over it, so prepare accordingly. So I think I've pretty much used all my time for you guys. Appreciate you tuning in. So I could go for another 45 minutes on these. And if it's super interesting, then hey, I'll do another one. So out.